Speaking of COVID lockdowns and all the damage that it's been doing, still have millions of people who don't have jobs that they should have were it not for the government deciding that they weren't allowed to continue working, who are not getting those supplemental benefits that they had been in the past if they've lost their job, let's say, since the beginning of the pandemic or at some point midway through. And this is where you would think the federal government would just step up and help out. But no, because what have I told you? You'll see this. This is a thread. This is a theme that will run through everything. What have I told you? Nothing matters to the news media and the Democrat Party right now other than beating Trump. Nothing can be allowed to be a distraction from that. It cannot detract from that. It has to be, it's all systems go. That is the only focus. The journalists get up in the morning, the CNN and MSNBC and ABC News, they get up and their mission in life is to make sure Donald Trump doesn't get reelected. And that's also true for Nancy Pelosi and the entire Democrat Party. The suffering that's out there, they don't care. They're the ones, first of all, that will just go out and say Republicans don't care about people dying. So how do we respond to that overheated rhetoric? Well, one way is just to point out, well, Democrats definitely don't care about people suffering financially, their businesses suffering emotionally. And you have this class of elites. You have this class of elites that still manages to have their jobs. They work remotely. They probably have, more time at home, more time on the couch. It's not so bad for them. They don't care. None of them are going to be storming Pelosi Manor with pitchforks and torches, screaming that she actually do something, right? That's not going to happen. But Chardonnay Nancy is openly standing in the way of people getting the federal benefits that the Trump administration has already said. We will sign this. We'll get this done. Republicans will push it through the House and the Senate. Trump will sign it. People will start getting their direct deposits. And that's money for groceries. That's money for rent. Money to pay for essential pharmaceuticals. I mean, this is serious stuff. People need help out there. Not everybody. Some people are, pretty fine, pretty fat and happy right now. Emphasis on fat, given all the COVID mac and cheese and sweet treat eating that's been going on. I can't speak for all of you, but some people are not really suffering at all about this. And they don't care what's happening to the working class. While the Democrat Party pretends to be the champions of the working class, Nancy, if you remember, this is the third go around here where she has said, no, I'm going to take hostages. I'm going to hold the funds the American worker, the American people need hostage to my left-wing legislative agenda. Because that's how Nancy Pelosi is. That's what she's doing. And it was a bit of a shock yesterday to see, and it really wasn't because Wolf Blitzer is some big man of the people. I'm just going to say it, all right? Wolf Blitzer, guy's a millionaire many, many times over, But she got really nasty with Wolf Blitzer. It was kind of amazing because CNN is just carrying water for the Democrat Party all day long, 24/7. It's gross. It's obvious. It's pathetic. That's what they do all day long. And they'll say, oh, but what about Fox? Fox has Democrats on. Fox has real Democrats. Fox has Pete Buttigieg. Sorry for mispronouncing his name. Pete Buttigieg on to represent the left-wing point of view. I mean, Fox will actually have these. They'll have real Democrat strategists, not, CNN will have on some Republicans like, yeah, I've never really worked on a campaign, but I'm just here to, get punched in the face for the amusement of CNN viewers. It's crazy. All right, but CNN all day long, that's all they do. And it's not enough. Queen Pelosi, Queen Nancy, expects 100% obedience and servitude from CNN. Her view is she owns CNN. CNN owes her, right? She's above them. They are her scribes. She tells CNN, the New York Times, and others what to say, what to think. Look, she's the most powerful elected Democrat, most powerful elected woman in politics in America. It's just a fact. I know it hurts me to have to say it out loud, but it's true. And so she expects them to just bow down, take their orders, and say, thank you, Nancy, may I have another? That's it. But yesterday, Wolf Blitzer found out that that really is what she thinks. Here's how the exchange went. This is over COVID relief funding. And here's how, this is how Nancy v. Wolf, how it went. The Wolf can snap back, apparently. Play 5.
But let's not go into that.
Yeah,
you evidently do not respect the chairman of the committees who wrote these bills.
I respect all of you.
And I wish you would respect the knowledge that goes into getting meeting the needs of the American people. But again, you've been on a jag defending the administration all this time with no knowledge of the difference between our two bills. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to say that to you in person.
All right, Madam Speaker, these are incredibly difficult times right now, and we'll leave it on that note. Thank you so much for joining
us.
us.
Leave it on the vote that you are not right on this, Wolf, and I hate to say that to you. But I feel confident about it, and I feel confident about my colleagues, and I feel confidence in my chairs.
Oh, we're not done, just so you know. There's more. But we wanted to pop in here for a second to say, first of all, wow, it's kind of nasty, right? I mean, Wolf kind of just tried to say, okay, thanks, see you later. And she's like, no, you're an idiot. Just so you know, you're wrong. You're wrong. Thanks for having me again. Sure, you're wrong. Just FYI. Like, unnecessary, slamming the door into his butt after she's also kicked him out of the house. You know what I mean? Not necessary. Petty. Nancy's feeling the heat. You know why? There's polls out there that show that American public blames Nancy more than Trump for the holdup in the COVID aid. This may be backfiring on the Democrats. Nancy's feeling that heat. What is Nancy Pelosi is ruled by polls and power. That's it. Nothing else. There's no principle. Doesn't stand for anything. Stands for Nancy Pelosi. And the Borg, collective of the Democrat Party. I don't know how many Star Trek fans are out there, but you get what I'm saying. Nancy Pelosi is like the hive mind that controls all the Agent Smiths of the Democrat Party, if you like the Matrix more. So this is all about why can't we get funding out to people? Trump, the Republicans have said $1.8 trillion. Nancy says, no, not enough. Now, a reasonable person would say there's urgency here. People don't have money for their bills. They're running up credit card debt. They may be losing their home soon, if they haven't already. They're under a lot of stress. They don't know when their jobs are coming back, if ever. Let's get these people help. And there's an obligation. I think it's so important because I think conservatives here, the government needs to help people. The government decided to take away their jobs. The government decided to shut down the economy. It's not your fault if you can't make a living, at your shoe store anymore because you're not allowed to have customers in the store on government mandate. That's government's fault. So instead of just saying, you know what, you're right, there's more stuff to be done, but let's get the money out to people, Pelosi goes, no, I want more, or I'm going to hold the American people who are suffering hostage. It's exactly what she's doing. And Wolf Blitzer kind of knows it. He's like, hey, but can't we get the people money? And then Nancy goes and says, you're covering for the Republicans? Which for a Democrat, for someone watching CNN, that's the gravest insult imaginable. To a CNN watcher, if it's being called a mass murderer or being called an apologist for the Republican position for a congressional spending bill, we all know that the second one is way worse. Much better be mass murderers can still believe in climate change. Mass murderers can still understand which pronoun to use of somebody's preferred pronouns. But Pelosi and the Wolf, they were not done. Play clip 6.
And it's not about me. It's about millions of Americans who can't put food on the table, who can't pay the rent,
and
who are
we
having
represent
trouble,
them. And we represent them.
Getting
and
by
we represent
these
them.
long food
and
lines
we
that we're seeing.
them.
I know
we
you
know
are.
them.
I'm just saying.
We represent them, and we know them.
As we say,
we know them. We represent them.
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, as they say.
It is
here in
nowhere
Washington.
near perfect.
Madam Speaker.
Always the case, but we're not even close to the good.
All right, let's see what happens, because every day is critically, critically important. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for your sensitivity to our constituents' needs.
I am sensitive to them because I see them on the street begging for food, begging for money. Madam Speaker, thank you so much.
Have you fed them? We feed them. We feed them.
We'll continue this conversation down the road for sure. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
No, let's just be clear. No, Nancy doesn't feed them. That's the point. Nancy's saying, we'll feed them if you buy us a new car. We'll feed them if you give us more stuff, Republicans. That's what's actually happening here. There's no problem with the PPP and the unemployment benefits. Republicans are like, let's go for it. Nancy won't do it. Nancy wants bailouts for cities that have been poorly run and running up debts. And you know why they have debts? This is when you really get it. This is when the rubber really meets the road, friends. Why are cities facing so much in the way of problems here? Public sector pensions. Huge drain. Other than police unions, who do you think the teachers unions and the municipal employees unions, who do you think they're all completely in bed with the Democrat Party? Of course. What are the two things that drive large cities deep into the red? New York City, Chicago, you name it. Well, there are two things. Public sector union demands and pensions, Medicaid. That's it. Programs that Democrats are obsessed with. So what do they want? They want to use the suffering of the American people to get a federal bailout for poorly run cities. And the Republicans are saying, sorry, that's not what this is about. You don't get to, give us a wish list. Nancy's standing over the patient. The patient's dying. Nancy's got the two electric paddles, in her hands. They go, clear. They do that whole thing. Nancy's got them in her hands. Republicans said, okay, we've turned on the device. Do it. And Nancy goes, I want a pony. And then I'll do it. Wait, what? What do you mean? And then she goes, we're the ones that try to save people during a heart attack. No, you're the one who's demanding a pony, Nancy. We see what's going on here. And I'm glad that Wolf Blitzer decided to try to regain some shred of dignity here by saying, okay, but there are a lot of people who are suffering. And then this is what I love too. This is the ultimate fraud here. Nancy Pelosi, she's a 78-year-old gazillionaire, Nancy Pelosi. I think she's worth 40 to 70 million or something like that on the congressional floor. She's worth a ton of money. This lady's rich and then some. I mean, really her husband is, but that's her money too. And she lives in a straight up mansion. I mean, like a baronial castle, practically, in San Francisco. And she really cares so much about the poor and struggling people. Anybody who believes that's an idiot. She doesn't care. She doesn't know these people. She doesn't spend any time with them. Nancy Pelosi hasn't worried about paying a bill in over 50 years. So come on, folks. Come on. CNN accidentally pushed into a moment of journalism by pushing back on the Speaker of the House, trashing one of their best-known anchors, just trashing him. I mean, really abusing the guy. I actually feel kind of bad for him. But you know why this is happening? Because Nancy knows that people are figuring this out, that her scam is not working as well as she had anticipated, just like it had in the previous times. And now she can't allow for the Republicans to get their way, in her mind, because that's a political victory right before the election that people are really going to feel. They're going to see the money in their bank accounts, and it's going to be clear that, wait a second, we could have had this a month ago, 6 weeks ago, but Nancy wanted to play games? I don't think I'm putting those lunatic libs in charge. I don't think so. No, instead, what she has to do is make sure people are either miserable and blame Trump, that's the game, or she gets this bountiful, $2.4 trillion or whatever it is she's demanding now, not $1.8 trillion, and gets to look like a hero, a savior of Democrat cities across the country, which will help with base turnout and also show that the Republicans caved to her. It's all politics, friends. It's all you have to know about Nancy. What is benefiting her? Not what helps the people. True of the Democratic Party as well. I recently got a crash course in home title theft. You better pray this never happens to you because it could financially ruin you. It goes after your most valuable asset, your home. Here's what happens. The legal title to your home, it's online. It's kept in a server up in the cloud. Cyber thief hacks these, finds your home's title, forges your signature on a quitclaim deed stating you sold your home to them. Then they take out loans against your home, all your equity's gone. You're left in debt. You won't know about this often until the collection calls start, or maybe until a foreclosure notice arrives in the mail. Insurance and common identity theft programs will not protect you. Home Title Lock protects you and puts a barrier, a virtual barrier, around your home's title. They instantly will detect tampering and shut it down. Go to HomeTitleLock.com, register your address to see if you're already a victim. Then use code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. That's code RADIO at HomeTitleLock.com, 30 free days of protection. HomeTitleLock.com, code RADIO.
The Democrat Party hates fracking. They hate coal. They hate clean, beautiful coal. I see what they do with coal now. They hate domestic energy production. And Biden will shut you down. He wants to shut you down just like your governor's got you shut down right now. They better open up your state.
That's right. They want to shut it down, friends. As I've been telling you, it's on the ballot. And you know there's big problems ahead. Because, first of all, they're lying about what's already happened constantly. They're always telling you things. The Democrats who have made decisions about COVID are in a furious, again, Soviet-style rewriting of history contest all the time. Perhaps the best single example of this is Governor Cuomo himself, who has the single worst record on COVID of anyone in the United States, perhaps the world. Maybe the Chinese, Politburo was worse, the Chinese Communist Party. But, inhumane and evil, but probably pretty effective in some ways. Here is what Cuomo says now about the nursing home order that I have seen that exists, that is out there. There's evidence here. There's proof. There's smoking gun. Here is Governor Cuomo, the possible attorney general of a Biden administration, friends. Just remember that. Play 7.
Willie, I hate to get technical with you, but sometimes these things are technical. There was never a directive that said we will send COVID-positive people back to nursing homes. The directive, which was modeled on the federal directive, said you cannot discriminate. But the state law clearly says a nursing home can't accept the person unless they can treat them. Having said that, would my health department have followed the federal guidance? Obviously not, knowing the political issue it was going to create. But there was no issue in reality, is what I'm saying, because we never did have a scarcity of beds. We always had additional hospital beds and emergency beds. So no nursing home was forced to take someone. We never got there.
It's just a lie. Can't discriminate against on the basis of COVID means when someone comes out of the hospital and they're supposed to go back to they want to go back to their nursing home, even if they may still have COVID. We're hearing all the time, they want Trump to still wear a mask and he's been testing negative. But can't discriminate in this context means you got to take him back or else you're going to get sued. That's what it means. This didn't happen everywhere else. This happened in New York. And New York had the highest death rate, particularly in nursing homes, of any place in the United States. Cuomo's just trying to rewrite history. It's all politics, he says. Yeah, just not the way he says it is. Play 8.
What do you say to those families who believe that the death of their loved one was preventable?
One of the things I find reprehensible about it, Willie, is the president did create that impression, which is cruel. It's cruel. It's cruel to say to the families who lost people in nursing homes, well, this could have been prevented by a different government policy. It makes their pain worse. It is not true. If you want to rewind all the tape, we should have been testing staff before they walked into a nursing home. That is true. And that's back in March when we didn't have any tests. We were told asymptomatic spread wasn't possible, that you had to have a symptom. So the nursing home workers without symptoms were allowed in. That was bad information that we received.
What he's saying, notice how he hides behind the family members of people that have died from COVID. That's his first response to this. Because he's scummy. The ACB hearings in their last day. And so far, the best summary I can give you of this is that Amy Coney Barrett should send the Democrat Senate Judiciary members a bill for the week-long constitutional law class that she has been giving them. She should ask for payment in full. She should ask for payment up front next time, because she's been taking them on a school bus all week. Nobody has been able to trip her up, corner her. In fact, they look pretty sad, pretty pathetic when they try. And it's largely been for the public, I think, a waste of time. It's all just pro forma nonsense from the Democrats about, oh, we love Roe v. Wade and Obamacare. I mean, they mostly turned this into an Obamacare commercial and reminded Americans that abortion for all 9 months of a pregnancy is the most important, most necessary thing that the Democrat Party stands for over all things. But there have been some notable moments, and one that will, I think, affect you and me already. It's through the change in the rules, what we're allowed to say. But first, I just want to point out that I love the state of Hawaii. I think Hawaii is one of the most gorgeous places in the world. And Hawaiian people are great. I've been to Hawaii a few times, and I love it. And I've dreamed of moving there before. I just feel like it's just so beautiful. Anyway, there's a lot about Hawaii that I'm a big fan of. Even with all of that, it's hard for me to forgive the state of Hawaii for foisting Mazie Hirono upon us. It's stunning. And I don't usually say this in this way. It's stunning that this woman has been elected. And I mean, if she was elected the head of her local school board, I would be shocked. Who thought this was a good idea? She's a United States senator. And it was a struggle to even understand what she thought she was saying yesterday. I mean, she's reading from notes handed to her by her staff. And I love this, too. They ask Amy Coney Barrett, can you show us your notes at one point? Held up a blank piece of paper that said United States Senate on it. Hadn't written a thing. Had no notes whatsoever. Everything just going from memory. And always is completely fluid. I got to say, more impressive in this questioning period than either Kavanaugh or Gorsuch were. I'm just going to say it. More impressive. Even for, look, and those are very smart guys, but even better grasp of the law. Even more able to engage in recall and a little bit of back and forth intellectual jousting, which usually she, to continue this medieval metaphor, unhorsed her opponents rather abruptly. Was not hard for her. But with all that, we still had to hear from Mazie Hirono yesterday. And what became apparent, and this is true of a lot of Democrat lawmakers and Democrat lawyers too, is at a fundamental level, they don't really understand the purpose of the law. They think that the law, it's true of the Constitution as well. They think that these are just social constructs that you shift or change as needed. And that there's nothing below it. There's no important reason that we all agree exists for this thing. It's always this moving target. Okay. So that's one part of this. And there's another part of this, which is that I think that they're really just unable to understand a lot of the arguments that Amy Coney Barrett makes. So they misunderstand the purpose of the law, and they don't understand the people that know and try to explain to them. They're not really even able to process it. They don't understand these complexities. I mean, Mazie Hirono, here you go. Here's an example of where she says something out loud, and everyone who was watching this yesterday felt like it's like she had taken all of our brains out of our skulls, put them in a microwave for 5 minutes, and then handed them back to us. We're just amazed. What's going on here? Play clip one.
When you say that you're going to make a decision based on the law, the real life stories that we've been talking about, you would consider those to be part of the law?
Yes. When we are talking about the law. It includes real stories from like what? Now you might think, Buck, that's got to be the craziest thing the crazy Maisie said yesterday, right? That's got to be the top of the list. But no, there was something that was even more outlandish that happened. Play clip 3.
To ensure the fitness of nominees for a lifetime appointment to the federal bench or to any of the other positions for any of the committees on which they appear, I ask each nominee these 2 questions, and I will ask them of you. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator Hirono.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
She's asking a female Supreme Court nominee if she's ever sexually assaulted someone. Yep. Now, I understand the Democrat response to this is she asks everyone. Okay, that doesn't mean it's not a stupid thing to do in the first place. And for those who say, why, Buck? Is there a problem with this? Okay. Should everybody who wants to be in public office be asked during a televised? I'm not saying that this shouldn't come up in background checks, and there's other stuff that goes into this, folks. But in a televised Senate hearing, should somebody be asked, if they've ever molested a child? Should everyone be asked that question? Have you ever beaten your wife or beaten your husband? I suppose. Should everyone be asked that question during a televised hearing? No. This is grandstanding from Crazy Maisie. That's what's going on. What the heck is this? But it gets worse. I keep trying to tell you, we're not even done yet. We haven't even gotten all the way through this, and yet there's more. This is where the language change comes in. Senator Mazie Hirono brings this up because earlier in the day, Dianne Feinstein asked a question of ACB, and ACB responded and used the term sexual preference. Now, I will tell you, and perhaps this is going to be a big problem for some people, I have used the term sexual preference in my life probably thousands of times. I mean, I don't even know, maybe even more. I mean, how many times have you used a phrase in common usage? Limo, a word in common usage. Those of you who like Black Hawk Down, you remember this, right? How many of you have used a phrase in common usage? And we were just told yesterday, and it was a fascinating real-time case study of how the left tries to win arguments by changing the words in arguments, the actual meaning and the definition and the usage of the words. I don't mean by just switching in other words. I mean, no, that's no longer a potato. That's a petunia. Well, okay, but I guess then, I thought we're talking about vegetables, right? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. That's what they do. And here's an example of it. Maisie went to bring this back up. Clearly her staff had handed her this one. If you want to see proof that we are largely ruled by idiots in this country, not everybody, but largely ruled by idiots, watch some of the Senate testimony from yesterday and watch Mazie Hirono's questioning. I really mean this. You will never think of the United States Senate in quite the same way. This person is... Really? Yeah, really. But here's when we found out that sexual preference is now a slur, effectively, against the LGBTQ community. Not allowed. Play clip 2.
So even though you didn't give a direct answer, I think your response did speak volumes. Not once, but twice. You used the term sexual preference to describe those in the LGBTQ community. And let me make clear, sexual preference is an offensive and outdated term. It is used by anti-LGBTQ activists to suggest that sexual orientation is a choice. It is not. Sexual orientation is a key part of a person's identity. That sexual orientation is both a normal expression of human sexuality and immutable was a key part of the majority's opinion in Obergefell, which, by the way, Scalia did not agree with.
So we get it. Sexual orientation is used by anti-LGBTQ activists. No, it's actually the phrase that has been in common usage for as long as I've been alive. And no one meant it as any kind of a slight. It was just meant to be descriptive. You know, your sexual orientation. I'm sorry, your sexual preference. Now orientation is, that's what we're supposed to say. But orientation means you're positioning relative to other things. So if it's relative to other things, then that must mean it also is some degree of change and subjectivity. But I'll get into that in a second. But this is what they came at Amy Coney Barrett with yesterday. And as much as I don't think this is really going to do anything, change anything in this hearing, I think Amy Coney Barrett's going to get confirmed. And Democrats now are just resigned to the reality of, wow, we can't, without a white male Christian to attack, Democrats are a little bit defanged. They don't have the same firepower. They need a white male Republican Christian, and then their tricks work. You make mother of 7, female, adopted 2 kids from Haiti, that's, and you have to specify a mother of 7. You got to say female because it could be a male mother of 7. You don't know. And this is left-wing dogma now. You're saying, come on, no, that's real. That's real. That's what they want, at least. That's what we're supposed to do. So now it's no longer sexual preference. It has to be sexual orientation, which is interesting because I would tell my sexual preference is women. This is not hard to think about or say. It's very clear that I am sexually attracted to women. So why? And, other people are sexually, some men are sexually attracted to men and so on and so forth. You know all this. Why is this offensive? Oh, well, it gets to, as Maisie was saying here, or she was reading off of her cue cards, the immutability of sexual, we'll use the term now, orientation. And notice that now they've changed this rule as of yesterday. I've never heard this before in my life, and I study wokeness, and I fight wokeness. This is a new one. Had never heard that before. Sexual preference. Never heard it. But I do remember being at a party a long time ago, and someone said he's a guy who prefers men or something like that for a guy who was same-sex attracted. And somebody else got a little bit snippy. But this is a long time ago, and I remember thinking, like, how could what's the... He didn't say anything disparaging. Why is that? But because the whole thing is, oh, you're born this way, and it's always that way, and there's no choice involved. That's why, and that's necessary for it to become, in the leftist approach to this, a protected characteristic like race, gender. So here's the problem, though, that they create with this. See, their illogic and their irrationality creates more inconsistencies, creates more problems. Now you can change your gender. We know this. You can change your gender, and it's not based in anything physical. So it's actually not people who have, I'm forgetting, I mean, we don't use the H word term for it anymore. There's another term for it I'm forgetting, but where you have some male parts and some female parts, usually vestigial of one and more of the other. But it's not that. It's not physically based. It's psychologically. It's how you feel inside that determines your gender. But if you can change your gender, how is it you can't change your sexual preference? Right? If you're a man who says that I'm really a woman, so I'm a trans woman now, and I believe they want you to just say woman too. You can't even, and if you say someone's old name, that's dead naming, right? There's all these new rules that we have to live by. You're a trans man who's attracted to a woman, who says you're a woman, and once you make that transition, you are now attracted to men, whereas you had been attracted to women. That does happen. Doesn't always happen that way. So then that means that sexual orientation is at some level, has to be at some level of preference, because if it can change based on emotion and psychological desire, then it's not immutable. They tell us that gender is on a spectrum. Gender, I'm just working you through. This is the left-wing woke logic here. Gender is on a spectrum. It's fluid, all these things. but sexual preference is locked in stone? You're born with a certain sexual preference that it cannot be added to or shift? How does that make any sense? So you can have all male body parts, XY chromosomes, and think that you're a woman and society has to completely accept and protect and actually now celebrate and cherish that. You know, men can get periods too. These are phrases the left uses. It's true. But we're supposed to believe from the moment of birth, you are either same-sex attracted or heterosexual or bisexual or I don't know what else there. I know there are other things that would go into this. And you stay that way forever? Where's the evidence for this? Where's the science, libs? But it's not about that. You know what it's about? Changing the rules and making all of us snap to it, do what we're told. Oh, wait, another thing I want to throw in the mix here. Hat tip Steve Krakauer, who put this up on his Twitter account. He is the editor and host of the Fourth Watch newsletter. So he did a quick lookup to see that as of last month, Webster's dictionary included a definition of preference as orientation or sexual preference. Today, they changed it to add the word offensive. I mean, they're actually changing definitions online, friends, in real time to attack Republicans and reflect their political whims. We have proof. We can prove it. That's what they do. I'm sure they're changing all the Wikipedia entries now, too. This is the Soviet rewriting of history. They can't win on the facts, so they change the facts. This is just one example of it, but they do this constantly, and they feel justified in doing it. In fact, they think that they're doing this because they're such good people, because they speak truth to power, or whatever other nonsense they tell themselves at night. God, libs really need to get a grip, but Trump wins this election. That's going to be something that I don't think is happening anytime soon.